Katie Morrison stepped off the transport ship and felt the cool air of station harmony hit her face. She had never been this far from home before. The metal floors under her feet felt strange compared to the rough ground of New Montana. Everything here was clean and shiny, nothing like the dirt and danger she grew up with. The station was huge, bigger than any building she had ever seen back home. The walls were white and curved, with lights that never flickered or went out. People walked everywhere, but they were not all people like her. Some had blue skin and walked on four legs. Others had wings instead of arms. A few looked like giant insects with many eyes. Katie carried only one small bag with her clothes and a few things from home. She had packed light because that was how you survived on New Montana. You never carried more than you could run with. The selection committee had picked her for this job because she was smart and could speak 3 languages. They did not know that she came from one of the most dangerous places humans had ever tried to live. A tall woman with green skin and no hair walked up to her. She wore a uniform with many badges on it. "You must be Katie Morrison from Earth," the woman said. Her voice sounded like music, with high and low notes that made Katie want to listen more. "Yes, that's me," Katie said. She kept her voice calm and steady, the way her father had taught her. "On New Montana, showing fear or excitement could get you killed. I am Administrator Veltar. Welcome to Station Harmony." "This is your first time away from your homeworld, yes?" Katie nodded. "First time off planet." Veltar smiled, showing teeth that were perfectly white and much too sharp. "You will love it here. We have beings from 12 different worlds living together in peace. It is a wonderful place to learn about other cultures." They walked through long hallways filled with more strange creatures than Katie had ever imagined. Some were tall and thin like walking trees. Others rolled instead of walked, their round bodies covered in soft fur. A few floated in the air, their bodies see-through like jellyfish. "The humans are still new to our galactic community," Veltar explained as they walked. "Many of the other species are very curious about your kind. They have heard stories but have never met a human before." Katie watched everything around her with the same careful attention she used to watch for predators back home. On New Montana, the animals that looked the most harmless were often the most dangerous. The pretty flowers could melt your skin off. The cute furry creatures had teeth full of poison. She had learned to watch and wait before deciding if something was safe. They stopped at a door with the number 847 on it. "These are your quarters," Veltar said. "You will share this space with another student. Her name is Zephyr. She is from Altair Prime and is very kind. I think you will be good friends." The door opened with a soft whoosh. Inside was a room bigger than Katie's whole house back home. There were 2 beds, 2 desks, and a big window that showed the stars outside. Everything was clean and new. A girl sat at one of the desks, reading from a glowing screen. When she looked up, Katie saw that she was made of what looked like living crystal. Her skin was clear and sparkled in the light. Her hair moved like it was underwater, even though there was no wind. "Hello," the crystal girl said. "I am Zephyr. You must be my new roommate." "I'm Katie," Katie said. She set her bag down on the empty bed. "Nice to meet you." Zephyr smiled, and her whole face lit up like a lamp. "I have never met a human before. I am very excited to learn about your culture. What is your homeworld like?" Katie thought about how to answer. New Montana was a place where it rained acid 3 months out of the year. The plants grew metal thorns that could cut through steel. The animals hunted in packs and could smell fear from miles away. Children who lived to see their 10th birthday were considered lucky. "It's different from here," she said finally. "More dangerous." "Oh," Zephyr said. "I have heard that some human worlds are difficult to live on. Altair Prime is very peaceful. We have no wars and no dangerous animals. The weather is always perfect." Katie nodded. She had read about worlds like that in school. Places where people never had to worry about being eaten or poisoned or struck by lightning. It sounded nice, but also strange. How did people learn to be strong if they never faced danger? Veltar left them alone to get to know each other. Katie unpacked her few things while Zephyr asked questions about Earth and human customs. Katie answered as best she could. but she realized that her experience was very different from most humans. She had never seen a city until today. She had never eaten food that someone else had grown or hunted. She had never slept in a bed that was not surrounded by weapons. "Tomorrow you will start your classes," Zephyr said. "You will learn about galactic law, interspecies communication, and diplomatic protocols. It is very interesting." Katie nodded. She had always been good at learning. On New Montana, learning fast was the difference between life and death. You learned which plants were safe to eat and which ones would kill you. You learned how to read the weather and when to find shelter. You learned how to be quiet and still when the night hunters came out. As the day ended, Katie lay in her new bed and looked out the window at the stars. She could see other ships coming and going from the station. Some were small like the one that brought her here. Others were huge, bigger than mountains. She wondered what kinds of beings lived on those ships and what their worlds were like. Tomorrow she would start her new life as Earth's representative to the galactic community. She would learn about other cultures and hopefully help them learn about humans. She just hoped that when they learned about humans, they would be ready for the truth. Humans were not like the other species she had met so far. They were not gentle or peaceful. They were survivors, shaped by worlds that tried to kill them every day. Katie closed her eyes and went to sleep, one hand resting on the piece of New Montana granite she kept under her pillow. Old habits died hard, and on New Montana, you never slept without something hard nearby that could be used as a weapon. Katie spent her first week learning about Station Harmony and its many different inhabitants. Every morning, she went to classes about galactic law and diplomacy. Every afternoon, she studied different alien languages. Every evening, she explored the station with Zephyr, who was happy to show her around, but Katie also noticed something else. Something that reminded her of home, but in a different way. The station had its own kind of food chain. Not the kind with real predators and prey, but the kind where some beings pushed others around and took what they wanted. It started on her third day. Katie was sitting in the common area, reading about trade agreements between different worlds. The area was big and comfortable, with soft chairs and tables where students could study or relax. Large windows showed the stars outside, and quiet music played from hidden speakers. A group of red-scaled creatures walked in. They were tall, maybe 8 feet, with long arms and sharp claws. Their heads looked like dragons from old Earth stories, but they walked on 2 legs like people. Katie had learned they were called Drakmari, and they came from a world where fighting was considered an art form. The largest of them looked around the room and pointed to a table where some smaller aliens were sitting. These were Vorthok creatures that looked like a mix of spider and octopus with many arms and big eyes. They were reading together, their multiple limbs turning pages and taking notes. "Move," the big Drakmari said. His voice was deep and rough, like rocks grinding together. "We want that table." The Vorthak looked up with all their eyes. They seemed scared. Their bodies started to change color, going from light blue to pale gray. Without saying anything, they gathered their books and papers and quickly moved to a smaller table in the corner. The Drakmari took the table and spread out like they owned the whole room. Katie watched this happen and felt something familiar. It was the same feeling she got when she watched the pack hunters on New Montana claim the best hunting spots. The strong took what they wanted, and the weak moved away. Over the next few days, Katie saw this pattern everywhere. The Drakmari, led by the biggest one who called himself Thraktor, seemed to control the social spaces on the station. They took the best seats in the dining areas. They used the recreation facilities when they wanted, making others wait. They spoke loudly and rudely to anyone who got in their way. Katie learned that there were other species on the station too. The Selenites were peaceful beings who glowed with soft light and communicated by changing colors. When the Drakmari were around, they dimmed their glow and stayed very quiet. The Altarians like Zephyr were gentle and avoided conflict whenever possible. Even the station security forces seemed to let the Drakmari do what they wanted. "Why don't they stop them?" Katie asked Zephyr one evening. They were in their room, and Katie had just watched Thraktor push a small Selenite out of the way in the hallway. Zephyr's crystal body flickered with nervous light. "It is complicated," she said. "The Dracomari say it is their culture to be dominant. The station administrators call it cultural differences. They say we must respect each other's ways." Katie thought about this. On New Montana, respect was something you earned by being strong and smart. But it was also something you gave to others who proved they deserved it. What she saw here was not respect. It was fear. "What about the security forces?" Katie asked. "Aren't they supposed to keep everyone safe?" "They do," Zephyr said, "but only if there is actual violence. The Dracmari are careful never to hurt anyone badly. They just intimidate, make others uncomfortable until they get what they want." Katie nodded. She understood now. It was like the big predators back home that would growl and show their teeth to scare smaller animals away from food. They did not always have to attack. Sometimes the threat was enough, but Katie had grown up with real predators. Things that would actually kill you if you showed fear. She had learned to read the signs of real danger versus empty threats. And what she saw from Thrachter and his group felt more like empty threats. The next day, Katie was sitting in the dining area during lunchtime. She had chosen a small table by the windows where she could watch the ships coming and going. The food here was strange, but not bad. It was certainly safer than anything she had eaten on New Montana, where every meal could be your last if you were not careful. Thrachter and his group came in, making their usual loud entrance. They looked around the room, and Katie could see other beings at various tables tense up. Some started eating faster, hoping to finish and leave before any trouble started. Thracher's eyes found Katie. She was the only one in the room who had not changed her behavior when he entered. She kept eating and looking out the window completely calm. This seemed to annoy him. He walked over to her table with his followers behind him. Katie could feel them approaching, but she did not look up. On New Montana, looking at a predator could be seen as a challenge. Better to stay calm and see what they really wanted. "Human," Thrachter said. His voice was trying to sound threatening, but Katie had heard real threats before. This was just noise. She looked up at him with the same calm expression she used when watching the weather back home. "Yes? You are new here. You do not know the rules yet. This is my dining time. Other species eat earlier or later." Katie looked around the room. She could see beings from several different species still eating at their tables. "I don't see any posted rules about dining times," she said in a level voice. Thracher's crest, the fin-like ridge on top of his head, started to rise. Katie had read that this was a sign of agitation in Dracmari. "The rules are not written," he said. "They are understood. You will learn." Katie finished her meal and stood up. She was much shorter than Thrachter, maybe coming up to his chest, but she did not seem bothered by the size difference. "I'll keep that in mind," she said, and walked away. As she left the dining area, she could hear worried whispers from the other beings. They had never seen anyone speak to Thrachter like that. Katie wondered if this was going to become a problem. On New Montana, when predators tested you, they usually kept testing until they found your breaking point. She hoped that would not happen here, but if it did, Katie was ready. She had been ready her whole life. The confrontation in the dining area was just the beginning. Over the next few days, Katie noticed that Thrachter was paying more attention to her. He would watch her when she walked through the common areas. He would make loud comments about humans when she was nearby. His followers would laugh and point at her when they thought she was not looking. Katie had seen this behavior before. On New Montana, when a predator was deciding whether to attack, it would test its target first. It would make threatening displays and watch for reactions. If the target showed fear, the predator would know it was safe to attack. If the target showed strength, the predator might look for easier prey. But Katie was not showing fear or strength. She was showing nothing at all. She went about her daily routine as if Thrachter and his group did not exist. This seemed to confuse and anger him more each day. The other beings on the station watched this strange dance with growing worry. They had never seen anyone ignore Thrachter like this. Some of them whispered that the human girl was too stupid to understand the danger. Others thought she was incredibly brave. A few wondered if she was planning something. Katie was not planning anything. She was just being herself. On New Montana, you learned to save your energy for real threats. You did not waste time worrying about creatures that were all noise and no bite, but Thraker was getting frustrated. He was used to other beings either submitting to him or challenging him directly. Katie's complete indifference was something new, and he did not like it. The situation came to a head during a social gathering in the station's main plaza. It was a weekly event where students from different species could meet and learn about each other's cultures. The plaza was large and open, with tables and chairs scattered around. Food and drinks from various worlds were available, and gentle music played from speakers hidden in the walls. Katie sat at a small table near the edge of the plaza, reading a datapad about interspecies trade laws. She had a cup of something that tasted almost like the coffee she remembered from Earth. It was not perfect, but it was warm and helped her stay alert. Zephyr had asked her to sit with a group of Altarians, but Katie preferred to be alone. She could watch the crowd better from the edge of the room. Old habits from New Montana were hard to break. The plaza was full of different beings talking and laughing together. The Vorthak were sharing stories about their homeworld with some Selenites. A group of young Altarians were teaching dance moves to anyone who wanted to learn. Even some of the station crew were taking breaks to join the fun. Then Thraker and his followers arrived. As usual, their entrance changed the mood of the room. Conversations became quieter. Some beings started to leave. Others moved their tables. Farther away from where the Drakmari were standing, Katie kept reading her datapad. She had learned to focus on important things and ignore distractions. The trade laws were complicated, and she wanted to understand them before her next class. Thraker looked around the room and his eyes found Katie. She was the only being who had not reacted to his arrival. Everyone else had either moved away or started watching him nervously. But the human girl just sat there, reading like nothing had happened. He walked over to her table. His heavy footsteps made the floor vibrate slightly. Other beings moved out of his way as he passed. By the time he reached Katie's table, most of the plaza had gone quiet. "Human," he said, his voice carrying across the room. "You sit in my preferred observation spot." Katie looked up from her datapad. Her green eyes met his yellow ones without any sign of fear or concern. She looked at him the same way she might look at a cloud or a piece of furniture. "I don't see your name on it," she said in a calm voice, then returned to her reading. The silence in the plaza became complete. Even the background music seemed to get quieter. No one had ever spoken to Thraker like that. The other beings stared in shock and fear. Some of them started moving toward the exits, sensing that something bad was about to happen. Thraker's crest flared up, standing tall and rigid on his head. His claws extended slightly, scratching against the metal floor. "You dare show disrespect to a warrior of the Drakmari Empire?" He growled. Katie still did not look up from her datapad. "I'm not showing disrespect," she said. Her voice was as calm as if she were talking about the weather. "I'm just sitting here reading. You're welcome to find another table." The other Drakmari began to circle around Katie's table. Their crests were also flaring, and they were making low growling sounds. The few beings who had not already left the plaza pressed themselves against the walls, trying to stay as far away as possible. Katie finally looked up again. She saw that she was surrounded by 5 large, angry Drakmari. Each one was at least 3 times her size, with claws that could tear through metal and teeth that could crush bone. Any normal person would have been terrified, but Katie was not normal. She was from New Montana, where things much more dangerous than these alien bullies tried to kill children every day. She looked at each of the Drakmari in turn, studying them. The way she used to study the predators back home. Thraker was the biggest and strongest, but he was also the slowest. His followers were younger and faster, but they were looking to him for leadership. If something happened to him, they would be confused and disorganized. Katie noticed that Thraker's stance was all wrong for actual fighting. He was posturing. trying to look scary, but his balance was poor. His claws were extended for show, but that actually made his hands less useful for grabbing or punching. He was like the big herbivores on New Montana that would rear up and roar to scare away threats, but could not actually fight well in that position. "Is there something else you wanted?" Katie asked. She set down her datapad and looked at Thrachter. With polite interest, as if he were a teacher asking a question in class, this calm response seemed to anger him even more. His breathing became heavier, and his claws scratched deeper grooves in the floor. "You will learn respect," he said. "One way or another." Katie nodded as if this was a reasonable statement. "I'm always willing to learn," she said. "But I'm not sure what you want me to learn from this." The standoff continued for several long minutes. Thrachter and his followers kept making threatening gestures and sounds. Katie kept sitting calmly in her chair, occasionally taking sips of her drink or glancing at her datapad. Finally, Thrachter seemed to realize that he was not getting the reaction he wanted. The other beings in the plaza were watching him fail to intimidate a small human girl. His reputation was starting to suffer. "This is not over," he said, pointing one clawed finger at Katie. "You will learn your place on this station." Katie looked at the finger pointing at her, then back at Thracher's face. "I already know my place," she said. "I'm a student here, just like everyone else." Thrachter turned and walked away, his followers trailing behind him. As they left the plaza, the normal sounds of conversation slowly returned. But many beings kept looking at Katie with new interest and concern. Zephyr hurried over to her table. "Katie, are you all right?" "I have never seen anyone stand up to Thrachter like that." Katie finished her drink and gathered her things. "I didn't stand up to him," she said. "I just didn't back down. There's a difference." As she walked back to her quarters, Katie wondered if she had made a mistake. On New Montana, when you challenged a predator's authority, it usually meant that one of you would not survive the encounter. She hoped that the rules were different here on Station Harmony, but deep down, she had a feeling that her troubles with Thrachter were just beginning. After the confrontation in the plaza, life on Station Harmony changed for Katie. Thrachter was no longer content to make threatening gestures from across the room. Now he was actively hunting her, looking for ways to make her life difficult and force her to submit to his authority. It started small. Katie would find her usual table in the library occupied by one of Thracher's followers. When she went to get food, they would cut in line in front of her. If she was walking down a corridor, they would deliberately block her path, forcing her to go around them. Katie adapted to these annoyances the same way she had adapted to everything else in her life. She found new places to study. She ate at different times. She took alternate routes through the station. She never complained or showed any sign that their behavior bothered her, but Thrachter was getting more frustrated every day. His simple intimidation tactics were not working. The human girl just adjusted her routine and continued about her business. It was like trying to threaten a mountain. No matter what he did, she remained calm and unmoved. So he decided to escalate. Instead of just blocking her path, his followers started deliberately bumping into her when they passed. Instead of just taking her usual table, they would spread their things out to take up multiple tables, making it hard for anyone to find a place to sit. Katie noticed these changes, but she did not react the way Thrachter expected. When someone bumped into her, she would simply step aside and continue walking. When tables were taken up, she would find somewhere else to sit. She never got angry or upset. She never demanded that they stop. She just adapted. This calm response was driving Thrachter crazy. In his culture, conflict was supposed to be direct and obvious. You either submitted to a stronger opponent or you fought back. Katie was doing neither. She was just existing, peaceful and unafraid. No matter what he did, the other beings on the station watched this strange war with growing amazement and fear. They had never seen anyone handle Thrachter like this. Some of them started to whisper that maybe the human girl was not as weak as she looked. Others worried that she was making things worse for everyone by not just giving in to his demands. Zephyr was especially worried. She had grown fond of her human roommate and did not want to see her get hurt. "Katie," she said one evening, "maybe you should just apologize to Thrachter. Tell him you respect his authority. It might make things easier." Katie was sitting on her bed, reading a book about galactic history. She looked up at her roommate's concerned face. "What would that accomplish?" she asked. "It would end this conflict," Zephyr said. "Everyone would be safer." Katie thought about this on New Montana. Giving in to a bully just made them stronger. It taught them that their tactics worked and encouraged them to use those tactics on others. "I don't think it would end anything," she said. "I think it would just teach him that threatening people gets him what he wants. But he is so much bigger than you," Zephyr said. "And he has so many followers. What if he decides to actually hurt you?" Katie set down her book and looked at her roommate. Zephyr was kind and gentle, from a world where conflicts were solved with words and compromise. She had never lived in a place where showing weakness could get you killed. "If he actually tries to hurt me, I'll deal with it," Katie said. "But I don't think he will. He's all show." Zephyr's crystal body flickered with nervous light. "How can you be so sure?" "Because I've seen real predators," Katie said, "and he's not one." The harassment continued for another week. Thracher's followers would make rude comments about humans when Katie was within earshot. They would laugh and point when she walked by. They would deliberately make noise when she was trying to study in the library. Katie ignored all of it. She had grown up with the constant sound of acid rain on the roof and the screams of night hunters in the distance. A few rude aliens making noise was nothing compared to that, but Thrachter was running out of patience. His reputation was starting to suffer. Other beings were beginning to wonder why he could not handle one small human girl. Some of his own followers were starting to question his authority. He decided it was time to make a public display. He would humiliate Katie in front of as many beings as possible, forcing her to acknowledge his dominance or face the consequences. The opportunity came during a formal diplomatic function in the station's main conference hall. Representatives from all the different species were there to discuss trade agreements and cultural exchange programs. It was an important event, and everyone was dressed in their best clothes. Katie sat with the human delegation at a table near the front of the room. She was wearing a simple black dress that Zephyr had helped her pick out. Her hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and she looked professional and calm. The presentations were interesting but long. Katie took notes on everything, trying to understand the complex relationships between different worlds and species. She was particularly interested in the trade routes and how they affected the economic development of frontier colonies like New Montana. Thrachter was also at the function, representing the Drakmari Empire. He wore elaborate ceremonial armor that gleamed under the conference room lights. His crest was decorated with metal rings that clinked together when he moved. He looked impressive and dangerous, exactly as he intended, throughout the presentations. He kept watching Katie. She was sitting quietly in her chair, paying attention to the speakers and taking notes. She looked completely relaxed, as if she had no idea that he was planning something. As the evening progressed, Thracher's anger grew. Here was this human girl, sitting calmly in a room full of galactic dignitaries, acting like she belonged there. Acting like she was equal to warriors and diplomats who had spent decades earning their positions. Finally, he could not stand it anymore. During a break between presentations, he stood up from his table and walked across the room. His armor made loud, clanking sounds with each step. Conversations stopped as other beings noticed him moving. Katie was still taking notes, reviewing what she had learned so far. She did not look up when Thrachter approached her table. She had heard him coming, of course. On New Montana, you learn to be aware of everything around you. But she did not see any reason to acknowledge him until he actually did something. Thrachter stopped beside her chair. He was so close that his shadow fell across her notes. "Human," he said, his voice loud enough for everyone in the room to hear. "You sit in the presence of your betters without showing proper respect." Katie finished writing her sentence before looking up. When she did, her expression was polite but uninterested, like someone who had been interrupted by a waiter asking if she needed more water. "I'm sorry, Did you need something? She asked. The conference room had gone completely quiet. Everyone was watching to see what would happen next. Some of the diplomats looked worried. Others seemed curious. A few appeared to be ready to call for security. Thraktor's crest flared to its full height. You will stand and acknowledge the superiority of the Drakmari Empire, he demanded. You will show proper deference to your betters. Katie looked around. The room had all the watching faces. She could see fear in some of them, anticipation in others. They were all waiting to see if she would finally back down or if this confrontation would turn into something worse. She turned back to Thraktor and spoke in the same calm voice she had used all along. I'm here as a representative of Earth and humanity, she said. I show respect to all the delegates equally. I don't think standing up or bowing down proves anything about who is better than who. Thraktor's breathing became heavier. His claws extended slightly, scratching against the floor. You refuse to show respect? I'm showing the same respect I show everyone else, Katie said. If that's not enough for you, I'm not sure what else I can do. For a moment, it seemed like the standoff might continue like all the others. Thraktor would make threats, Katie would remain calm, and eventually he would walk away frustrated, but this time was different. This time, his pride was on the line in front of the most important beings in the sector. This time, he could not afford to back down. Without warning, he reached down and grabbed Katie's shoulder, intending to physically force her to stand up, and bowed to him. It was the first time he had actually touched her. The first time the conflict had moved from words and gestures to physical contact, and it was the last mistake he would ever make. The moment a Thraktor's clawed hand touched Katie's shoulder, everything changed. What happened next was so fast that most of the beings in the conference room missed it completely. 1 second Thraktor was reaching down to grab her. The next second, he was falling to the floor with his neck bent at an impossible angle. Katie never stood up. She never raised her voice. She never even stopped taking notes. Her left hand continued writing while her right hand moved in a quick, precise motion that caught Thraktor's arm and used his own momentum against him. The technique was something her father had taught her when she was 8 years old, after a crystal viper had nearly killed her younger brother on New Montana. Children learned early that sometimes talking and running away were not enough. Sometimes something wanted to hurt you badly enough that you had to hurt it first, and when that happened, you did not hesitate. You did not hold back. You ended the threat as quickly and completely as possible. The silence in the conference room was complete. Hundreds of beings from dozens of different worlds stared in shock at the scene before them. The mighty Thraktor, warrior of the Drakmari Empire, lay motionless on the floor beside a small human girl who was calmly finishing her sentence about trade route regulations. Katie set down her pen and looked at the body beside her chair. She felt the same detached calm she had felt the first time she killed a night stalker that had tried to attack her family's shelter. It was not pleasant, but it was necessary. And on New Montana, you learn to do necessary things without letting emotions get in the way. The other Drakmari at Thraktor's table were the first to react. They jumped up from their seats, their crests flaring and their claws extending. For a moment it looked like they might rush across the room to attack Katie, but then they stopped, staring at their leader's twisted form. Security forces arrived within minutes. They were a mixed group of different species, all wearing the same blue uniforms and carrying stun weapons. Their leader was a nervous Vorthak named Clickwur, who had dealt with many diplomatic incidents, but never anything like this. Nobody move, Clickwur said in his high, chittering voice. This is now a crime scene. Everyone remain in your current positions. Katie raised her hand politely. Excuse me, she said. May I have permission to speak? Clickwur looked at her with all 6 of his eyes. This calm human girl had just killed one of the most dangerous warriors in the sector, and now she was asking permission to talk like she was in a classroom. You may speak, he said carefully. He grabbed me, Katie explained in the same tone she might use to report that it was raining outside. Where I come from, that is considered a potentially lethal attack. I responded with appropriate force to defend myself. The Drakmari delegation erupted in angry shouts. "Murder!" One of them screamed. "She killed him without warning." "He was only trying to make her show respect," another added. This was not self-defense. This was cold-blooded killing. Katie listened to their accusations without changing expression. When they finished shouting, she spoke again. "On my world, grabbing someone without permission means you intend to hurt them badly or kill them. I have been trained since childhood to respond to such threats immediately." I gave him many opportunities to resolve this conflict peacefully. Clickwar was frantically accessing legal databases on his portable computer. Interspecies law was complicated, especially when it involved beings from very different cultures. "The investigation will determine what happened here," he said. "For now, Katie Morrison, you are confined to quarters pending a full inquiry?" Katie nodded and stood up slowly, making sure all her movements were visible to the security forces. "I understand," she said. "May I gather my notes?" As she collected her papers, the other beings in the room watched her with a mixture of fear and amazement. This small, quiet girl had just killed a trained warrior with her bare hands. And she was acting like it was the most normal thing in the world. The investigation that followed lasted 3 days. Clickwar interviewed dozens of witnesses and reviewed security footage from multiple angles. He consulted with legal experts from 12 different worlds and read through thousands of pages of interspecies law. What he found was a complex situation with no clear villains or heroes. The security footage clearly showed weeks of harassment and intimidation by Thraktor and his followers. It also showed Katie's consistent attempts to avoid conflict and her complete lack of aggressive behavior, but the footage also showed the fatal encounter, Thraktor reaching for Katie's shoulder. Her lightning-fast response, his body hitting the floor. The whole thing took less than 2 seconds. The legal experts were divided. Some said that Thraktor's behavior constituted a clear pattern of harassment and that his physical contact with Katie justified her response. Others argued that she had used excessive force against what was essentially a rude gesture. The breakthrough came when Clickwar decided to research Katie's background more thoroughly. What he found made him understand everything that had happened. New. Montana was classified as a Class 12. Deathworld by the Galactic Survey Corps. It was one of the most dangerous planets that humans had ever tried to colonize. The survival rate for children born there was less than 60%. Those who lived to adulthood were considered among the most dangerous beings in human space. Katie's personal file revealed that she had survived 17 separate predator attacks before her 10th birthday. She had been trained in multiple combat techniques by former military personnel. Her psychological profile indicated that she processed threats and responded to them in ways that would seem extreme to beings from safer worlds. More importantly, the legal database revealed that beings from Class 10 or higher death worlds were given special consideration under interspecies law. Their survival responses were recognized as involuntary reactions developed through extreme childhood trauma. When Clickwar presented his findings to the review board, the decision was clear. Katie had acted in self-defense according to the behavioral patterns of her species and homeworld. Thraktor had initiated physical contact in a threatening manner. Under both human and Drakmari law, she was justified in defending herself. The Drakmari delegation was not happy with this decision, but their own cultural laws supported it. In their society, warriors who died in combat were honored, but those who died through their own foolishness were considered to have brought shame on themselves. Thraktor had attacked an opponent without understanding her capabilities. By their own standards, he had died without honor. The incident changed everything on Station Harmony. The casual bullying that had been accepted as normal suddenly seemed much more dangerous. If the quiet beings from death worlds could be this lethal when threatened, how many other species were more dangerous than they appeared? Katie was released from confinement with a formal apology from the station administration. She returned to her classes and her routine as if nothing had happened. But the other beings on the station treated her differently now. They gave her space and spoke to her with careful respect. She completed her cultural exchange program 3 months later with high marks in all her courses. The Galactic Council commended her for her diplomatic skills and her ability to bridge cultural differences. They seemed to have forgotten that she had killed someone on her second week. When Katie returned to New Montana, she brought with her new knowledge about galactic law and interspecies relations. She also brought a reputation that followed her. Wherever humans traveled among the stars, the story spread through diplomatic channels and eventually became a legend. The Deathworld girl who sat calmly through alien bullies and snapped a neck without standing. It served as a reminder that in a galaxy full of dangerous species, humanity's greatest strength was not their technology or their diplomacy. It was their ability to survive anything and adapt to everything, even when that meant becoming something. That other species feared. Back on New Montana, Katie resumed her normal life. She helped her family tend their small farm and defend it from the various predators that tried to eat their crops. The incident at Station Harmony was just another day in the life of someone from a death world, but across the galaxy, beings learned a new lesson about respecting others, regardless of how small or peaceful they seemed. Because you never knew what kind of world had shaped them, or what they were capable of when pushed too far.